a citizen that has to follow their corporate bylaws. So ask yourself something. Can an employee of McDonald's or Walmart kick your door down and steal your kids? No. I mean, what would you do to them? You'd probably beat the crap out of them. Yet these CPS agents are working for independent, private, for-profit businesses that are not government. Supreme Court of the United States says that since governments chose to incorporate themselves, they are not de jure. They are not a government of we the people. They are de facto. De facto means without fact. They operate under the color of law. All statutes, all codes, all ordinances, all executive orders, those are all colorable. That means they're a fallacy unless you agree to them, unless you give your consent. So, since 1861, even Congress has not passed any law, actual law. Our Constitution says only Congress can pass law, can make law. Then it has to go to the House, go to the Senate, through their House to the Senate, and then to the President to be signed, and then it becomes law. Now, the problem is every act of Congress since 1861 has had a line in it that says something along the lines of, this act shall not affect any rights thus previously established. Excuse me. What this means is that Congress has not passed any ex post facto laws. So they haven't passed any laws since they've incorporated. This is what we have to understand. We have to understand things like Title 18, Section 242, that they're depriving us, men and women, of our rights under the color of law. In Title 18, Section 241, if more than one person comes to you, like two officers in a car, they are a conspiracy to deprive you of your rights under the color of law. All of a sudden, you have police officers, then you have attorneys, you have courts, you have judges who are all conspiring against you. And to take your rights. You have many, many rights as a man or a woman, but you have none as a person, except civil rights. Civil rights are just merely, they can't discriminate against you based on sex or religion or race, okay? Not that they don't anyway. It just doesn't matter. That is what civil rights are. You have civil rights and you have privileges as a citizen, a person, and a resident. The word person in law, and all laws say this person shall not do this or shall not do that. The person is not the man or the woman. The person is an entity, a office of, a position. It's created upon your birth by your birth certificate. These are the things that we have to understand, is that a man or a woman is being held as surety for that entity. We are also the signatory of that entity. See, men and women, we write our autobiographies, and then we go to a bookstore and we autograph those books. That's what men and women do. Signatories, people who sign something, are signing as an officer of their corporation, the person. When they put your name down in all capital letters and send you a mail, they're not even sending it to the man or the woman. They're sending it to the person, to the corporation, to the entity. The word resident means someone there temporarily to do business. By the sheer use of your zip code, when you write your address out and you don't write in care of and then your address and then you use your zip code, that zip code puts you in the District of Columbia and you reside in the state you're in, like I reside in Oregon temporarily to do business. So we have 325 million people in the United States who live in Washington, D.C. And we just reside in our individual states to do business. That's what being a citizen, a person, a resident does for you. So is that what our founding fathers wanted us to be? No. They wanted us to be Californians, Oregonians, Wisconsinites, Floridians, Arizonans. They wanted us to be state nationals. Each state is an independent nation state. California is as different a nation from Oregon or Idaho or Utah or Arizona as France is to Italy, Spain, England, or Germany. They're different nations. They united for a cause so that we would have a centralized government to provide us with 19 essential governmental services and no more. That's what we agreed to pay for, 19 essential governmental services. 18 of them are clearly listed in the Constitution, and one is in the preamble. That's the one most people miss, but it's there. So those 19 services is all we ask for. Everything else is supposed to be provided by our states as a bottom-up form of government. Start in our parish and townships, expand into our counties, then into our state, then into the United States. Instead, the United States government has turned our government upside down by the mere fact of incorporating and making all of our states subsidiary corporations. See, the state of Oregon or the state of Arizona is a corporation, and it's different than Oregon. It's different than Arizona. Those are geographical lines on a map. They are the land under our feet, our home place, where we should be inhabitants of, not treated as though we live in Washington, D.C. and reside in our state temporarily to do business. So how does this basic history lesson I'm giving you, very basic, very short history lesson I'm giving you, affect you in your lives? I don't want to bore you to death, okay? How it affects us is in our court system. You look at Jamie Kovac. When she was brought up on charges in Oregon, her indictment said she was in the 9th district. That's the 9th district of the District of Columbia. Did it say she's being tried in the state of Oregon or Oregon State? No. It says she's being tried in the 9th district of the District of Columbia. That is the simplest form of evidence that they're making you live in Washington, D.C., and that you reside in the state temporarily to do business, keeping you firmly grounded in Admiralty law. Now, all of our courts since 1934, and by the way, this country was founded under common law. In 1861, it started to adopt Admiralty law. We existed in both types of law until 1934, and then we have pretty much existed in Admiralty law or commerce or what we call contract law ever since. So if there is no contract, there's no agreement. If there's not full and honest disclosure, there's no contract. If there's no two parties meeting of the minds, there's no two parties wedding signatures or autographs, then there is no contract. These officers and agents and agencies of government are all working for a private for-profit business. Your cities are incorporated, your counties are incorporated, your states are incorporated. A lot of your courthouses are privately owned corporations, owned by some guy somewhere. And the jails are privately held corporations. They're in it to make money. So, to talk a little bit about our status, we need to be the state nationals our founding fathers intended us to be, not the US citizen, the person, the resident. That allows them not to have any jurisdiction over us. When we're living by God's law, common law, supreme law, and supreme law is our constitutions and our treaties. Now, I've never been a big fan of the United Nations, but I am a big fan of the United Nations Human Rights Department, because they have written treaties that countries have signed on to, which distinguish and set up and set aside our human rights and allow us a place where we can look at those rights and bring them up in court. And when we do, all courts, all judges, right down to the municipality level, all agents of government, all officers are supposed to obey them. Now, a lot of those guys are uneducated and they're compartmentalized. And that's something we should talk about, is compartmentalization. Because people are basically good, honest, moral people. I love all you people on here. I love anybody who will take a stand to make things right, to stand up for our God-given unalienable rights. Okay? But we've kind of got to understand that if you wanted to pull off a con job, and it takes 50 people to pull off a con job, if you told all 50 people what you're going to do to steal from hundreds of thousands of others, and they knew the whole con, they are not going to do it, because they can't go home at night and face their children. They can't go home at night and face their spouse or sleep at night if they know the whole con. So you would have to compartmentalize them and say, all right, you're the getaway driver, and you're this and you're that. And that's what our government has done. You've got these CPS agents who just think they're doing their job, and these attorneys that just think they're doing their job, and these judges that just think they're doing their job, and these police officers who just think they're doing their job, and they're all compartmentalized idiots in the con. Okay, they can go home at night and say, hey, I did the best job I possibly could today. And in the meantime, they're destroying millions of families' lives. So they're doing it because they do not know the history of how this con job came to be and what all the pieces are in the puzzle of the con. See, that's one thing I've always been good at, is putting puzzles together. I read a lot. I study 4 to 5 hours a day, and I've been doing that my whole life. And I can take pieces of history, presidential speeches, acts of Congress, United States Code, statutes, constitutions, law, international human rights. I can put them all together and say, all right, this is what the puzzle looks like. Here's the con job. And this is how we're all getting screwed, to be honest with you. And these are the things that we have to understand in order to stop these bad things that these criminals are doing to us. You've got wonderful people like Jamie and Tim Kobat, who have been through a living hell over the last 15 years with government coming after them for one reason or another. And if you look at their court cases, at their evidence, at their actual testimonies that we're giving, and the denial of their evidence, and the denial of their witnesses, and the fact that a prosecutor got 3.5 days to present a case against Jamie and make her look terrible, and she only got a few hours to defend herself. And then the jury runs out and deliberates with the instructions from the judge on what to look at and what not to look at. Then they're railroading you. They railroaded her. They found her guilty of 4 felony counts of fraud. She didn't commit fraud. Everything she did was perfectly legal to do, and she did it right. And I read the evidence, and I clearly saw that. Yet she, and I should let her tell her story, but she was railroaded, which means the definition of railroad is to be led down a narrow path or rail to a predetermined outcome. And that's what happened during her court. I met her after her trial and before her sentencing. You know, during that period of time where you're trying to get your life in order and prepare for spending 20 years in jail behind bars. And she and her husband brought their motorhome up to Walmart parking lot. And every day I drove to Walmart, we spent time in her motorhome, and we went through her evidence, and we created documents, and we submitted them to court. And then Jamie wrote out 5 pages that she could stand up there and say before the judge at sentencing. And you know what? All 4 of her felony counts of fraud went away because they created so many violations, so much fraud from the prosecutor. Even an indictment is based on a grand jury that the prosecution runs. No defense testimony is heard by a grand jury. None. The prosecution walks into a grand jury, tells them all the lies, and the grand jury says, yeah, this person's terrible, let's indict him. And if you look at an indictment, right at the bottom of an indictment, it says a true bill. It's an invoice. If you can't pay your invoice, then you get brought up on charges. If you can't pay the charges, you have to bond. If you can't pay the bond, your body, the man or the woman, is being held as surety for the bond while they collect on your Cesta QV trust, the trust that came from your birth certificate, where you were bonded and you were insured and you were registered as an entity, and you're sold out there on the market in LEIs, which are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it's all in treasury bonds, which is the full faith and credit of the United States government, and it's our labor, our sweat, blood, and tears of our labor that give the federal government any credit whatsoever. We are the creditors. The U.S. citizen, the person, the resident, is the debtors. They are the debtors. The men and women are the creditors. This trust is ours. It's in our name. It's set up by them on our birth as a way to fund government. There's 3 ways that they can get at that Cesta QV trust. They can find you guilty of a misdemeanor or a felony. They can take your kids, or you die and the estate is settled, a balance is achieved, and that estate lives on in perpetuity forever. And any money that estate makes from that moment on, a sweep account is created, and that interest earned is swept directly into the government coffers. Now, let me tell you something. If they're not getting enough money coming in the door, all they got to do is arrest a few more people, take a few more kids, start a war somewhere like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Grenada, Panama, Vietnam, Korea, and kill off a few more of us so that more money gets put in the sweep account. And this system was put in place in 1933. So how many people have died since 1933 that their birth's been registered? All those estates are still alive today. They live on, they outlive the man or the woman, they live on in perpetuity, and the government is just sweeping money right and left. That's why our federal budget's $4 trillion and our income taxes are $990 billion, one little small piece. And not only that, the income tax doesn't even go to fund government. It goes to fund the interest on the bankruptcies of the government. Okay. Where do they get the balance of the money? Out of your Cesta QV trusts. The Department of Fiscal Services says the Department of Justice is the biggest funder of government by far. By far. That our court systems in the United States collect $1 trillion a day. That's more in 1 month than our entire gross domestic product of the United States in a year. They collect in less than a month. If our GDP is 25 trillion, which is somewhere right around there, that's 25 days they collect it from us out of our Cesta QV trust through our court system in the United States alone. This is off-book money for them. And did they tell us? Was there full and honest disclosure? No. This is the problem. You know, if they would have came to our grandfathers in 1933 and said, guys, you know, we've been trying this thing called government for a long time, and we just keep going bankrupt. We can't seem to get it funded. We can't continue on this path. Here's our plan, and we're going to set up this birth registration deal, the Cesta QV trust deal, and we're going to sell U.S. Treasury bonds based upon your credit, the man and the woman's labor, his blood, sweat, and tears. And they would have laid out the full and honest disclosure of it, and they would have came to us and said, you know, let's let this build up until you're, let's say, 18 years old. And then between the ages of 18 and 25, we'll start paying you $1,000 a month out of this trust account. And maybe between 25 and 30, we'll pay you $2,000. Between 30 and 35, we'll pay you $3,000, and so on and so forth. And they cut us in on the deal a little bit. Then our grandfathers probably would have said, okay, that sounds like a great plan. Let's do it. And they probably would have approved it, and everything would have been fine and dandy. And over time, we could have negotiated for more money as our economy has grown, and it could have balanced itself. But did they do that? No. They let our mothers walk into a foundling hospital. And the definition of the word foundling is a safe place to abandon a child. And all hospitals and churches were designated as foundling hospitals around 1912 in the United States. Our mother walks in to have a baby, and all she's thinking about is having that baby and getting home to her comfortable bed with her bouncing baby. And she's handed a stack of paperwork, and she says, and she's told that this is just merely to give your baby a name and get it registered. Put it into the system. And so she signs it as an informant. The definition of the word informant is someone who gives someone up to another. She gives that baby up to the state. She's not told that. She's been under a major medical procedure, under duress, probably under the influence of painkillers, excited to go home with her baby. No full and honest disclosure. The contract, therefore, should be null and void. But she signed as an informant, giving the baby up to the state, literally giving them title to the child. Title. The state registers that baby with the Department of Human Resources. Human resources, human capital, slavery. They register that baby and they bond it and insure it. If you were born prior to 1975, between 1933 and 1975, you were bonded for $630,000 and insured for $1 million at birth. If you were born after 1975, you were bonded for $1 million and insured for $2 million. Now, that bond amount is through a bank. My birth certificate says American State Bank on the bottom, but your birth certificate's on bond paper. It's got a CUSIP number, CUSIP number. That is an investment control number that is a United States Treasury number. And when you get a Social Security number, that's an additional CUSIP number. And when you get in the military, your military ID number is an additional CUSIP number. And if you get an advanced degree in college, that student ID is another CUSIP number. And you just keep getting bonded and insured and in your name in different ways. And you're bought and sold by companies buying United States Treasury bonds every single day. And those Treasury bonds pay an interest. That interest is earned and it just gets reinvested and reinvested. So when your birth certificate is registered, all they're doing is issuing $1 million worth of Treasury bonds. So they want everybody registered birth that they can get. Because every time they register a child, it's another $1 million of credit for the federal government. So that baby comes through the birth canal, is delivered by the doctor at the dock. The baby is a vessel. It's an entity, a vessel, a ship, if you will. In Admiralty, delivered at the dock by the doctor, and it's given a bill of lading, and then it's taxed forever. And that's why a CPS agent or an officer can come in your home without any due process, without a proper warrant, and take your kid because they have title. They own it, and you haven't laid claim to it. The legal definition of the word minor is someone under the age of 18. We all know that, but it's also someone of any age who has not claimed their minor account. So that's another class down the road, but that's claiming the SESTA QB. And that is a totally different subject than what we're on today. So, and hours worth of teaching to teach you that. But when we can learn how to stand up, when we can learn how to say something when they come to our door, to remove the consent, to say we stand up against your presumptions and assumptions, your hearsay. I mean, when they came and took your kids, what did they say that you did? Your house was dirty, you didn't vaccinate, a million different things that they claim you did for a reason to take your kids from you, to kidnap your child. Where was the first-hand witness? Did that first-hand witness swear an oath under the penalty of perjury? Are they going to take the stand and testify against you that you did what they said? Let's talk about the warrant. If they show up with one at all, where did it come from? Was it an Article 1 or an Article 3 court? No, it was signed by some private bank administrator at some private courthouse, for-profit business, handed to a private officer, for-profit officer or agent. Did it state the place to be searched, the item to be seized? Was it backed up by a claim? No. These warrants are nothing more than a piece of paper that you could run through a shredder and they don't matter one single little bit unless they come from an Article 1 or an Article 3 court and they've got the proper claim behind them. There's got to be a claim or an affidavit or somebody who's sworn under the oath of penalty of perjury backing up as a first-hand witness to whatever they're accusing you of, and they don't have it. So they're just conspiring against you, because usually they show up with more than one, and they're depriving you of your rights underneath the color of law, which all rules, codes, statutes, and ordinances, policies, executive orders are all colorable and are not law. And you can look all this up in multiple Supreme Court cases that tell us this. So it's no different than you allowing an employee from McDonald's or Walmart or Burger King to walk up to you and take your property. Now, then again, some of these employees of these private corporations have a 45 on their hip. They have the threat of force behind them. So you have to be nice, you have to smile, and you have to be politically correct, and you have to know enough law to stand up for yourself and say, hey, look, buddy, I'm sure you're a great guy, but you're depriving me, a man, of my rights under the color of law. You work for a private for-profit corporation who has no de jure authority as government at all. None. The only authority you would have is if I gave it to you, if I consented to your authority. If I walked up to a security guard at a shopping mall and I said, hey, buddy, I'm just tired of dealing with it and I'm tired of making decisions, and I gave a security guard my authority, I gave him the authority to tell me where to go, where to sit, what to eat, how to get there, then he has the same rights as a police officer, and he could tell me exactly what to do because I just gave it to him. And I could give any one of you my authority to rule over me, and you could tell me exactly what to do and hold me accountable, and if I didn't do it, you could arrest me and put me in prison. And that's what we're doing to these police officers and these agents of government. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Take a stand. Stand up for yourselves. Teach your children this. We're taught in school from the very beginning to obey, 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 obey. Be a good little sheeple. Be a good little slave. Hey, I can be good. I can love my neighbors. I can go and help them out. I can help all you out. And I can do it of my own free will. I don't need somebody to tell me I got to do that. And I don't need somebody to tell me that I'm operating in commerce. So therefore, I need a driver's license, a proof of registration, and a proof of insurance when I drive down the road in a car. All I need is a passport. The Constitution says you need to be safe and secure in your papers and your identification. We're supposed to have identification on us. We're supposed to show it to anyone who asks. But having the right identification to put yourself in the right jurisdiction is what matters. And if you look at a passport, I can get mine out because I don't carry a driver's license. And I look at a passport, it says the Secretary of State of the United States of America hereby requests to all whom it may concern to permit the citizen or national to pass without delay or hindrance, and in case of emergency to give all lawful aid and protection. What's that tell a police officer? His only job is to look at my picture, make sure it's not somebody else's passport, hand it back to me, and say, I won't detain you any longer. Be free to go on your way. Be safe in your travels. See, we need to be a little self-governing. And we need to stop giving our consent to employees of Walmart. They may dress up in these blue outfits, and they might have these 45s on their waist, but they are not there to protect and serve any longer. They're there as revenue agents to tax you as a person, tax your business, tax your entity, tax you as a resident, not be a man or a woman, a living soul. Genesis 2:7, and I, God, created man from the dust of the earth, and I breathed into his nostrils a gift of life, and man became a living soul. That's what we are. Our bodies are going to go back in the ground. They're going to return to dust, and our soul will live on forever. It's the things we learn in this lifetime that matter. That's why I've dedicated 3 to 4 hours every single day, sometimes more, to just study, to learn. That is basically the basics of this. Once you know that, and you know the language to determine what jurisdiction you're in, then you can stand up and you can say, hey, I know my rights. I know where they're written down. They're written down in all of these different documents. Here they are. And no one has a greater right to my child than I do. Nobody. You know, we've got a lot of kids back in a lot of different ways. This document has been doing wonders. But it has to be done in the right process. It has to be done by somebody knowledgeable. And you have to learn enough about the document in order to stand up and back it up if you have to in person verbally. But it's not that difficult, because it goes after the two things that they cannot stop: challenge of jurisdiction and an exposure of the fraud. And once you expose their fraud, they've lost. It's that simple. Expose it to everybody. Let's get it out into 500 courtrooms in the next month or two. When it's in front of 500 judges across this nation, this criminal mafia bar association is going to have to change and adapt. They might have to go back to common law the way it was meant to be, where if there is no victim, there's no crime. And let us raise our children as we, the parents, see fit in the best way possible. And focus our energy on helping those that are having problems. If a young mother is having drug problems, for instance, you don't come in and take her kids, you help her with her drug problem. You make sure the kids have what they need, but you help her with the drug problem. You make sure the kids are getting to school and getting to the doctor if they need it, but you help her with the drug problem. You don't take the kid. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. And if they don't start obeying, I'm giving them their last chance here. I've been fighting this fight for 30 years. And if this document doesn't do it, if we can't stand upon our rights and get it done, then we're going to have to do it a different way. Whatever that takes. Okay? I got the longest fuse in the whole world. And it takes a long time to get me to a point where I just can't take any more. And my fuse has been burning for 30 years. And I see massive changes. In the last 45 days since this document has started to get into lots and lots of courtrooms, we've seen two things happen. One, we've seen an article in the American Bar Association Journal talking about international human rights. They haven't done that in years. I've been reading it for more than 10 years, and they haven't done that. And two, we've seen a group take this to The Hague, and The Hague has come out with a statement saying United States courts are criminally neglecting international human rights and human rights in general. These are two incredible things that have happened in a short period of time. Not to mention, we're using this document not just to get kids back. The other day, I got a call from somebody who used it in a traffic citation. Okay. We're getting people out of prison. We're stopping people like Jamie from going to jail in the first place. We're stopping kids from being taken because the mother had knowledge of me and calls me up on the phone while the cops and the CPS is at the door. And I say, write this down and give it to them. And they give it to them, and the cops get in their car with CPS agent, and they leave, and they never come back. These are the kind of things we've got to learn to do. Have I talked long enough, Dave? I mean, this is a tremendous amount of information to take in a short period of time. I know that.
Well, you're doing an amazing job. I want to see if Jamie's audio is working, because you just explained how Jamie was actually able to not go to prison. And for a lot of people, they are afraid because they don't realize that these things can work. So if we can get Jamie's audio to work, I want her to tell her story. And then I want you to repeat what you said about the two children that were returned recently, David Strait, because that's another thing that people love to hear, that little ones are being returned. Jamie, is your audio good?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
You're perfect. I'm going to mute myself out so you can go ahead and talk about your experience and what happened in recent history. I think your story is huge, and the fact that so many of us can see you here live on Facebook, and we can put a face to somebody who actually did this, and someone with a story that was in federal court that was so freaking dangerous and scary. I think the people will need that to move forward, and the people want to hear. We have 43 people active in this group right now watching, and we have probably about 40 people actively watching on Facebook. So if you can, please explain to us what happened with you. I'm going to mute myself out again so I don't interrupt.
Is Dave on at the same time?
I'm here.
Dave's up at top, so you guys will be running the show.
Thank you. Okay. You want to go ahead, Dave, or you want me to?
Go right ahead. I've been talking for a while.
Okay. As you all know, I met David Strait after I had been found guilty of 4 felonies in a federal court from a jury. Scared to death, facing 20 years in prison. Prior to that, I had been in and out of court with my son in custody court for from his father. Let me say it that way. I had a ex-husband that was very determined, and we just fought through custody court many days and many years, and I never lost sole custody. He broke into my home. He called DHS on me. DHS tried to take my son. They would do investigations and keep him from me and send him to his father's. They never won. But had I known what I know now, I would have probably saved myself 15 years in custody court alone. But after that, my ex-husband couldn't seem to let go. My son was 18 at this point when these federal charges came on, and not quite 18, but almost. So he had made some false allegations to the federal court about me and some other things. But regardless, I went to court, was found guilty, fought for 2 years. But prior to me completely walking away. I met Dave after the guilty plea, and we fought daily. I mean, I was in my motorhome at Walmart, as he said. We were working hand in hand daily. And if I couldn't see him face to face, we were on the phone at least 5 or 6 times a day. This is so strong, these documents. And I didn't have these documents at the time. Let me just tell y'all, I only had a affidavit that I put in to the federal court with 400 pages of evidence that was left out in my case, because that's what they do. They want to scare you. They want you to take a plea deal. They want you to, you know, just be so terrified that you just say, okay, I'll do whatever. I don't want to go to prison, or I want to take a less plea. Don't do it. That is their game. They want you to take plea deals because that way they have to prove nothing. They don't have evidence to begin with anyway. But when you walk into a federal courthouse and your sentencing day is here, and I'm walking in with my husband and Dave, and I'm facing this guy that he calls himself a judge. I don't call him a judge. I don't adhere to him. He's not above me. But regardless, we spent probably, what, Dave, maybe 20 minutes in that court.
Oh, yeah, 20 to 30.
And I just had 5 pages that I had written down of all the stuff that Dave was teaching me with his help. And I just went in there and I didn't allow the jurisdiction. I didn't accept their jurisdiction. They kept trying to pull me in. And the judge, tried very, very hard. But I read these 5 pages and you could have heard a pin drop when I was reading this. That judge's mouth was, he didn't know what to say. And then I didn't see, Dave seen the prosecuting attorney stick her checkbook up on the table while I'm speaking. Now, that is huge. Am I right, Dave?
That's right. Because the prosecuting attorney has to pay the court costs out of her own pocket if she brought false charges against somebody, which is what she did to Jamie. She brought false charges. So if Jamie was not sentenced, the prosecutor has to pay. But the prosecutor, you got to understand, also net retentions. So does the judge from someone who gets convicted of a misdemeanor or felony out of their SUV. They get commissions. They call them net retentions, but they are commissions.
2% the judge gets.
Yeah. We found out on a fraud charge, it was $2 million per count that the court gets. The judge would have got $95,000 per count, and the prosecutor would have got $50,000 per count. That's $200,000 to the prosecutor, $380,000 to the judge, and $8 million to the court out of her SUV if she would have been sentenced to all 4 felony counts.
So I left. I have no felony charges. This, if I can express to anybody going through any sort of, whatever it is, whether it be your children being taken away, whether it be a ticket that you're getting for driving, to federal. I mean, federal. I was in federal. That's the worst you could probably be in.
And she hasn't spent one day in jail.
Not one day. And to Dave, he is my hero and my dearest best friend. And he just changed my life. And you guys can't. This is huge to show the world. It's huge. And people need to stand up, because if this little old gal here can walk in and tell a judge and shake it in my shoes, and I can hear a pin drop, and it changed the whole atmosphere. It changed the setting. It reset the setting is what it did, along with our Almighty God, because I believe in that myself. Between him and
Absolutely.
Dan, I really see this world. It just changed my life. I would be sitting in prison for 20 years. I have, between myself and my now husband, we have 10 kids and 22 grandkids. And I never did anything illegal. I knew I didn't, but I'm a fighter, and I'm not going to stand for somebody taking me to be a slave. And that's what it was all about. It was just to get the money. I shouldn't even been in it personally. It was like, don't take it personal. It is a game. If they're actors in a play, when you go in a courtroom and you see these people, I can sit in a courtroom now and it makes me laugh. I see the setting. I see them setting up. When you go to a courthouse and you go to your first hearing, that's the setting. They start setting it up. When you go to pre-trial, they're setting it up. They've got to know who's going to bring what, who's going to not bring what. How are they going to win this case? How are they going to hide the evidence? People, wake up. It is a game. It's huge. This is the biggest fraud I have ever seen upon the people in my entire, I'm not very old. Well, kind of, sort of. But I mean, out of my entire life, this is huge to see this kind of fraud going on, and especially from our government. You don't want to believe it,
And
but
we
it
prove
is.
it all
It's
with
true.
paperwork.
And you've got to just see for what it is. Yes, every bit of every has phenomenal job and hours and years worth of work to prove this to you all. And there is, my children went to court with me every day that I had to appear in court. And they were so terrified, and it tore my family up. I mean, I know what it's about to have your family tore up. And they go after my husband, which they're trying to do again. But it is so important that you all sit down and you take 2 hours a day. If you have to take more, do it. If you can, learn this now. If we could get this to every single court, in every courtroom, I promise you, in a matter of a month, you're going to see this internationally, because this is international. This is not just in the United States. This is going on in every country. We're all being enslaved by our countries with this setup system that they've created to keep the money flow coming. Credit. Let me say credit. There's no money. But I did the paper trail, and I think Dave said it too, that the justice system is the biggest, or fiscal services #1 client. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we did the paper trail, and when I go on to Pacer and you look at the court documents that are public record, it says the Miller Act right there. I'm like, I call Dave and I'm like shocked. I'm like, this is the Miller Act on here is why that's the cause. That's what it says.
And your marine policy, your insurance policy as well. I mean, it lists it right there. You proved it with fidelity.com with the dates that corresponded to your original trial date and your sentencing date before those even happened. And then
every time I went to court.
Right.
It was crazy.
Hey, I want to say something real quick. So for everybody that is watching, let's look and understand what's happening here. When you hear a innocent woman crying and saddened by what a so-called court is doing to her, it should cause you to slow down and realize that if this one woman is going through this much pain, that her case is over, she is no longer fighting in that case. They turned everything over with what she spoke forth with. the documents that she put into this case. If that can happen to her and it hurts her right now and she did not go to prison, I want you guys to think about how many other people are trapped right now going through the same thing, where they're trying to throw someone in prison, some innocent woman, one of your relatives, somebody that you met before. They're trying to throw them in prison right now today in order to make money for something that is false, something that they don't have the power to do, but they don't mind doing it to you as long as you don't know or realize what's happening. Think about that. If a document can be put on the record that shows so much fraud that they let you go, then that means that they didn't have the right to take you in the first place. They didn't do it for the right reason in the first place. Now, this is super important because a lot of us go through these court cases and we think if we just tell the truth, if we just do what's right, they're going to let us off. And many of us have been railroaded time after time after time after time by private businesses for profit. And that's one of the hardest things to believe, that it's really a private business for profit. But both of the people on the show today have been able to explain how it's private business. There's no way that she should be able to talk about the way that someone is taking money from a trust and be able to show it with her social security number. That should not happen. There should be no way that we can see that prosecuting attorneys are taking part in the same type of behavior, and there should be no evidence. But one thing that will never happen, you will not see any government official come on and say that, no, they're lying, and let's debate about it and let me prove that what they see is not what they see. That's the sad thing, is that we've allowed attorneys to do foolish things. We get to the point now that we say, well, all attorneys lie, so we just let them do that. You know, rather than holding them accountable for lying on people and committing fraud and stealing from people's estates. Notice that no one from government comes on and talks to us about our estates. Nobody talks to us about the private trusts that are there that they're able to attack. They're putting all these broke people in jail, and you would have to stop and ask, what would be the purpose of putting broke people in jail? Why would you do that? You see, if they can't pay you money for the charges, why would you want them in jail? Is it just to make license plates or something? Is that enough money to make these people happy? If it costs $40,000 a year to hold them in jail, let's say, is making a license plate the whole time they're there really helping the state? What's happening is that these private parties have learned to steal money from the people in creative ways, and they're not telling us about these entities. So even when we try to discuss what's going on, it might fly over some people's heads. But I want us to slow down and think about this and look at this. And on top of that, I see a couple of people in the comments, they're asking if we can talk about some of the steps to freedom. Well, David has spoke already about the standing and the status and things of that nature. I think that might be the logical next step to talk about, because he has used certain steps and things to attack the system, and he's alluded to it. And I know it goes over a lot of our heads. So what I might do, if David is willing, is ask him to discuss the whole idea of standing and jurisdiction, and just to break it down in third grader language, because I believe, based on what you guys are saying today, a lot of you guys asked me for proof, right? So we got proof right there in my screen. We got Jamie as proof. She actually was let go after the jury said she was guilty, okay? And it was a jury trial. It wasn't really a trial by jury in the first place. As David said, the jury is lit. So you can have a trial while the jury is there, and a corporation be just running you amok and railroading you with a jury sitting in the room. A jury of your peers is people who understand what you understand, who are making the judgments with evidence, and not the judge just saying you do this and you do that. All right, but let's let David talk about status, standing, and jurisdiction, so that we can get an understanding of what's going on. I want everybody to get a paper and pen, though, because we don't have someone come out in the open usually ever and explain these things, and especially someone who has this much success. So let's If David will, let's ask him to explain the status, standing, and jurisdiction, and I will go ahead and mute myself out again.
Okay, you ready? Okay. So you probably all heard that all persons are equal in the law. Attorneys like to throw that statement out there. You know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or black or white, or, you know, we're all equal in the law. All that really means is you're all persons, you're all dead entities. Nothing dead can stand up. Everything in the courtroom is dead. And until a man or a woman walks in alive, sui juris, withstanding, stands upon their own rights, and establishes their status, standing, and jurisdiction, now you're above the court. Now you're above the judge. Now you're above everybody in the room. You're the only one that's got flesh and blood and breath pumping through your body. You're the only one with standing. Everybody else now is dead, because they're all dead to begin with. They're all treated as an entity, and an entity is just a dead piece of paper. That's all it is. So that is truly standing. In order to establish your status, standing, and jurisdiction, you have to stand firmly and belligerently on a couple of rights. The foundational cornerstone right of all rights is your right to self-determination. That is free agency that God gave us. God gave us a free agency to make decisions, right or wrong. We have a free agency to do that. So your right of self-determination is the foundational cornerstone of all your rights. It is up to me to determine my status, my standing, and my jurisdiction, not them. They can't do that for me. Only I can do that. I can walk in as a man, or I can walk in as a person. If I walk in as a person, I'm under contract law. I have to prove my contract, or I have to disprove their contract, one or the other. That's all you got. But when I walk in as a man, I have rights. So the number one right you have to stand on first is your right of self-determination. Then you can stand upon your right of redress of grievance. What does that mean, a redress of grievance? That means that somebody has done something that you totally disbelieve in, or you don't agree with, or is against your very nature. And when you stand upon your right of redress of grievance, that means that you are opening a discussion, a debate. They can't hold you accountable for your discussion, your debate, your beliefs, and your opinions while you are redressing your grievance, while you're saying it. They cannot hold you accountable to that. Okay? Then you can establish your status. What is status? We all have statuses. Are we a state national? A we the people, as our founding fathers wanted us to be? Do we have, as the Geneva Convention says, a we the people, a state national, has limited diplomatic immunity? That means that unless we have harmed another or someone else's property, we can live our lives freely. Nobody can put us in jail. Nobody can do anything to us if we can stand upon that status. We are the ones, we the people are the ones that created government. The US citizen was created by government, by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which, by the way, was never legally ratified. And we have proof of that. It was never legally ratified in the first place. It was signed into our Constitution by a secretary. The majority of the states voted it down. Oregon actually voted for it and then sent a letter of rejection. So the 14th Amendment, which holds us all as citizens, shouldn't even exist in the first place. But since they're using that, our judges are using it to their benefit against us. So because they're using it to their benefit against us, we have to stand. There are many different statuses in the United States. They're all in the USC in Title VIII. And there's a state national, there's a US national, there's a US citizen, there's a state citizen. The government considers, the US government considers anyone who is not a US citizen or a US national to be a non-resident alien. That means you live somewhere else and you do not reside. You are a free man, a free inhabitant. That's what that means. We were supposed to be the New Yorkers, the Floridians, the Oregonians, the Californians, the Arizonans, the Wisconsinites. We were supposed to be those people. That's what we are. In fact, none of you, even though you've marked a box on somewhere on some form that says you're a US citizen, none of you have done what's required to even be a citizen unless you originally came from some other country and you went through the legal immigration process to be a US citizen. That's the only time you are one, legally. And there's many court cases that say we've never done what's required to be a US citizen. Yet they are holding us under presumption and assumption of law to be a citizen, a person, and a resident. Three things you really never want to be if they're coming after you. Does that mean we can't contract with our fellow human beings? No. We can contract all we want to. We have the free, unlimited right to contract. It just means that we should follow all 8 elements of a contract. And one element that most of these attorneys want us to forget is called privity of contract, which means they can't sell it to a third party without our permission. Have you ever had your mortgage sold over and over and over to somebody else? There's no privity of contract. So they cannot sell that contract unless you agree. So anyway, all mortgage contracts are fraud. And these governments are stealing all of our private property. They've stolen your cars, but because you don't have the manufacturer's certificate of origin. They stole your property because all property shall be in land patents according to the United States Code. All property shall be in metes and bounds. And so they go in and they re-describe your property as Lot 23 of Block 7 of Spring Hill subdivision and attach an address with a zip code on it and put your name in all caps and then send you a tax report. And they hold you as title under some fake deed called a warranty deed or something. Land patents can only be granted. They can't be deeded. They can't be sold. Land, property, land patents cannot be sold. They can only be inherited or granted to another. So what they do is they sell real estate, which is everything from the dirt up. And then your land just happens to go along with it. That's the difference in real estate sales and land sales. And I've owned a real estate company, a title company, 2 mortgage companies over the years. I've owned a securities company, an insurance company. So I understand these kind of things of law. I've had a construction company and a development company. I subdivided property and sold it. And boy, I wish I would have known now what I know now. Because I wouldn't have lost $9 million in the housing market crash. I mean, I've made and lost more money than most people ever make in their lifetime. But I help people for free. so that they don't fall into the same traps that I've fallen under my entire life. I've been sued by the IRS. I've had to sue them back and win. I've had my children taken from me. I had to walk in and demand an emergency court hearing, and I had them back by 5 o'clock that day. You understand that when you stand up and you know how to stand and you have good mentors that help you, they can't do anything to you out there. I've never been arrested. I've never spent one day in jail in 55 years because I know more than they know. I've learned the law. Most attorneys don't know the law. If you want to have fun someday, go to a law school and sit down with the administration and tell them you'd like to get a law degree and you'd like to learn what it takes to be a bar member and take a look at the classes that they teach. And it's all policy and procedures of the court. It's how to remain in honor and not dishonor. It's language. That's all they learn. They learn how to fill out forms and please the court. They learn civil rules of criminal and civil procedure. That's not law. Law is reading the United States Code, the constitutions, your treaties, your public law from Congress, your acts of Congress, learning your history of the law. That's how you beat these guys. Beat them with their own books. The IRS has 73 books that tell what the IRS code is, and it's codified in Title 26 of the United States Code. You want to beat the IRS? Learn the difference between income and wages. They can't tax your wages, only your income. That's why it's a 1040, it's an income tax. Do you make any income? Income is money earned on investments. Stuff you do with the wages after you've already made that money and you invest it and then you make money on it. That money is taxable, but your wages, your labor isn't. Man, there isn't one head of any department of the Internal Revenue Service that'll even tell you, they'll sit there and tell you that we don't understand why people even pay on their wages because it's not codified. Excuse me for a second.
David, I got one other question I want to ask you because you talked about the different parts of the contract and how they can't assign the contract to somebody else or sell it without your permission. What about the whole idea of not having a meeting of the minds or full disclosure? Because a lot of the people who are on this video, they've had their kids taken and CPS supposedly has a contract with them, but they never get full disclosure. They never tell you what you're getting into. When you get your birth certificate, they never tell you what you're getting into.
They're not even a de jure government agency. They have no more authority than a drive-through Burger King window. Okay? And you're letting them take your kids? Man, I'll tell you, knowing what I know today, if they showed up at my front gate out here, they wouldn't get through. I can tell you that. So that's what you have to do.
So can you explain that idea of meeting of the minds though, so they can understand? I know they're not de jure. A lot of people don't know what that means either though. Like when you say de jure, some
that
people understand the factor.
We the people. It means the government of we the people. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a short clip note version of de jure, but it means something that we the people all got together and we said, hey, this is what should happen. Our government used to be de jure, but it became de facto by getting incorporated over and over again. Okay.
Now, why would they want to be incorporated?
Oh, to protect their butts.
So to get rid of liability, right?
That's right. If they're a public servant, they are liable to we the people. If they're a corporation, they're using that corporation to hide out, to protect their own ass. Okay. They didn't incorporate for our benefit. They incorporated for theirs. I mean, make it harder to hold them in court, to hold them accountable. Now we can still do that. I mean, the USC 1983, Title 18, 1983 gives us more than enough to go after them with. Title 241, 242 of Title 18.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of ways to go after him. Chris Hallett, Kurt Pendergrass going after him with the emolument clause of the Constitution, a great way to go after him. I mean, but if you understand they are operating under truth in lending laws, and we follow the process of truth in lending, then we can judgment our affidavits, we can file liens, and we can go after those judges and prosecutors' house and their retirement fund and hit them where it hurts.
See, even the Federal Debt Collections Practices Act.
That's right.
Being that they're private corporations, and this is the thing, people get upset with me. Now, I'm not as smart as you, all right? You're a million miles ahead of me. But there's some things that I have learned about how they're private corporations and how they're functioning outside of the way that a corporation can function. And I keep telling people, look, this is private business. It is private courts, you know? These are corporations. They're trying to run. See, in business, I understand having a trust. I understand having a private membership association and organization because we're working lawfully and we just don't want people who are clowns to take our stuff. But when you're supposed to be working as government officials and you got money coming or Federal Reserve notes coming in on this hand from the people, supposedly, and then on this hand, you're running a program with a federal corporation where you're all taking Social Security money and just funneling it into your pockets through private trust, private business, and all that. That's what hits me really hard because I can see it clearly. I'm like, wait, these guys are working as a private membership association under contract with each other with the federal corporation, which is a Clearfield Trust doctrine mess, you know, and I try to tell the people and break it down, but a lot of times people are believing that they're still de jure government because they say they are, rather than looking at their contracts together.
They haven't been since March 22nd of 1861. Okay. I mean, all you guys who grow up in kindergarten through 12th grade believing that Abraham Lincoln is the best president that ever lived, you better start reading letters and journals of people who lived during the time, because he was a communist. He was a follower of Karl Marx. When he was governor of Illinois, he passed many communistic laws, and the people did not want him to be president. That's the real reason he failed so many times when he ran for president. I mean, I don't think he became president until his 7th time running. It was because the big bankers of Boston, New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia got behind him and put a tremendous amount of money into backing him. Did he ever become president of the United States? He was also a bar association attorney. So, along with Senator Morrill, he passed the Morrill Act, which was an unfair tax act. It taxed the factories in the North 3 to 4 up to 6% tax, and then it unfairly taxed the farmers of the South up to 60% tax. So 11 delegates from 7 southern states walked out of Congress, leaving Congress sine die. It had no quorum. It couldn't exist. It died that day. That's what sine die means, is that day. Our government died. So what did Abe Lincoln do? He signed Executive Order number 1, first one we'd ever had, and it put the Grand Army of the Republic in charge of the federal government. Okay. Then he made himself commander-in-chief of the army. Then he bankrupted the original Virginia trading companies in the original United States of America, and he reincorporated them as a Delaware corporation. See, our country originally, before George Washington, was the Confederated States of America. And the South reclaimed that name, and they became a separate nation. It wasn't a civil war. It was a war between two separate nations. The Confederate States of America, which was the original founding government, there was 13 presidents of the United States before George Washington. But you're not taught that in school. Okay? George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. Then the Confederate States broke away. Texas actually broke away, and Texas was going to be its own country for a while. And so the war was between these three nations, and that's what the Civil War was. So once you learn real history, you'll see a different story. And once you learn the history of how we got to where we are today and why we got there, then you'll see why they're de facto without fact, and why they're taking as much money from us, well, they possibly can, because we're all waking up because of the advent of the internet, the invention of the internet, and we can communicate instantly. Within a 100,000th of a second, we can communicate all across this country. They took advantage of our grandfathers, because when they printed a newspaper in New York in the 1860s, it took a month for it to get to San Francisco for anybody to read it. By then, they'd already done the damage. There's nothing anybody in San Francisco could even say. See? But now we're learning it instantly, and we're learning it together, and we're standing up as a force to be reckoned with, and there's nothing they're going to be able to do about it. So anyway, we're going to have to quit pretty soon this session, and probably got another 5 minutes or so.
Can you do me a favor before you get off, Dan? Can you talk about some of the steps to being free, like repudiation of citizenship, and like the purpose of the affidavit? Now, I know you got the affidavit, and I'll share it in a group so everybody can be prepared to hear from you and be able to see what the affidavit is, what type of things that Jamie used. But can you speak about the repudiation and the affidavit, to the one that we deal with the court, with the never perfect?
Yeah, the never perfect affidavit I wrote is called that for a reason, because I believe we're in a constant state of perfection. We just keep getting better. So this affidavit is now 90 pages. I mean, it keeps growing, it keeps morphing, it keeps changing, because once they get it, they're going to start changing the rules a little bit too, and we're going to have to adapt. And that's what a good warrior does, is they look at the battlefield and they adapt to the changes, and that's how we keep winning the war, is we keep adapting. So the never perfect doc is never perfect for a reason. If you ever get in it and it says it's perfect, it's because I'm probably dead. Okay, but we will keep changing, we'll keep adapting. Now, we covered status, standing, we actually covered jurisdiction. There's 3 jurisdictions. There's the land, air, and water. Don't let them Bar Association members confuse you with the word jurisdiction. 9 times out of 10, what they really mean to say is venue. It's in the city's venue, it's in the county's venue, it's in the state venue, it's in the federal government's venue, it's in this particular agency's venue, not jurisdiction. All of those different things operate in Admiralty. They operate in one jurisdiction. Men and women operate in common law to all of us. Our person operates in Admiralty under contract law. So that's an important thing to remember. Don't let them confuse you with jurisdiction. I've had attorneys stand up in courtrooms and say this over and over and over again, and I've stand up and said, "Oh, you really mean venue, don't you?" And they go, "Oh yeah, okay, here's somebody who knows what they're talking about." You know, they just misuse terms on us. They misuse language to suck us in. And as long as we don't fall for the bear traps that they lay out before us, then they can't suck us into their picture. I mean, I've had police officers come up to my front gate, and I've walked out there, shook their hands, smiled at them, said, "How you doing, officers? Are you safe out there?" I know they're basically good, moral people. They're our neighbors, but they're so darn compartmentalized and not real intelligent for the most part. So they're just revenue collectors for a incorporated county or city or state. And they don't know that they're being incredibly immoral by enforcing these corporate bylaws upon the people. See, one of our rights is we have the right to be left alone. We have the right to be secure in our property, in our possession, in our papers. We have the right not to be trespassed against. We have the right not to have our children taken from us. I mean, right there, I'd put a bullet right there. If an employee from Walmart showed up and tried to take my kids, and that goes for all those corporate employees, love them to death as people. They could be my neighbors. But when they start trespassing against you and they start committing felonious crimes against you, no, not me. At some point in time, you got to stand up and say enough's enough. But you do it peacefully first. You walk up, you smile, you shake their hand, and you learn what to say to remove yourself from their jurisdiction. So the only thing they can do at that point is truck up on down the road and see if they can collect revenue from somebody else. And then you try and teach your neighbors so that they can't collect revenue from them either. Okay, so that's what we have to do. We have to stop the fraud. And it is a big game of fraud. Did that answer any question that you asked?
Yes, sir. That's good, because there has not been a great explanation at one time of this much information and this much of what the fraud is. And so when people get to see real life people who actually have been through it, who have actually done things that works, is liberating to the people. And so the goal was to get the doors open for people to understand what's happening. And then if we can, we want to get you back on and go over the document so that you can explain like why you put certain things in certain places, what it means. So when people use it, they have an understanding.
Learning the order of things is important. Also, when you first read the document, you go, well, wait a minute, I already read that. He set it up here. Well, you got to understand there's something called the rule of three. And these judges have to ask you something 3 times, but you also have to tell them something 3 times. So I tell them the same thing 3 different ways throughout that document, over and over and over again, whatever it happens to be. I've made sure I've covered the rule of 3 in there. That's why it's so important not to just mangle that document and take so much out of it. Don't try to, yeah, I know, Dave.
That was me, guys.
Don't try taking it out, because then it's not going to work. It's written the way it's written for a reason, so that it works, so that it answers that rule of 3 question.
When I seen a man, it comes to a time where a man understands the fraud, I was like, shucks, I read that already. Shucks, I read that again. And that's one of the things that got me too, is that I made the mistake of taking stuff out, thinking, well, I only need this, I only need that. When in actuality, as I started to understand and talk to you, I started to be able to break down why, and then my standing became stronger, because I not only did I know a lot of the things was true, but you gave me a platform to be able to see what is true. And then you also give documentation, so I was able to go see where it came from. And it just put me leaps and bounds beyond where I was even the day before I met you. I mean, leaps and bounds. So I'm appreciative of that. But go ahead, keep talking. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people that I credit out there for helping teach me. One person I should give a shout out to is William Wagner. If you guys don't know
Oh,
who he
wow.
is,
William Wagner is the bomb.
you should know who William Wagner is. William Wagner used to be a federal prosecutor.
What?
For many, many, many years, he was a federal prosecutor. And
Wow.
he learned the fraud, boy, I'll tell you, and he learned it the hard way. And he started speaking out, and I think he's been in every prison in every county in Oregon because they keep getting him on contempt charges because he stands up on people's behalf and he speaks out against them. And I'll tell you what, attorneys or prosecutors that have learned, and I've won a lot of them over onto our side over the years, but the ones that have learned, they don't treat their traitors very well. Okay. So when you're a mafia member of the Bar Association and you speak out against the Bar Association, they attack you big time. They're going to attack guys like William Wagner a lot faster than they're going to attack me because I'm just merely a man and I'm going to destroy them with words of debate. William, they're going to throw in jail. Okay. Marcus Mumford, they tased on the courtroom floor. He was a defense attorney and his client was set free. And they tased him because they arrested his client immediately after he was set free in the courtroom and said he's going to remain in jail and they're going to haul him down to a different state. And they rearrested him. He should have been able to walk out the door and go down and talk in front of the reporters and his family and see his family. But they didn't want him talking in front of the reporters. So the U.S. Marshals just arrested him and they tased his attorney to the ground in court. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
So you, if there's any of you good attorneys out there watching this, you need to call me and let me win you over to our side. Well, I guarantee you'll probably tear up that criminal bar card, that labor union membership you have, because you see the states don't license attorneys. No attorney is licensed by the state. They're licensed by the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And the bar is the British Accreditation Registry. And if you don't believe me, there's a 1947 treaty with the Bar Association. Now, what is the legal definition of the word treaty? It's an agreement or contract between two foreign nations or entities. So if you don't think the Bar Association is a foreign nation or entity, read the 1947 Bar Association Treaty. Okay? There are many, many reasons why we do what we do. All these attorneys are supposed to register, and these judges are supposed to register with the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and they don't do it. Very few of them are registered with the Foreign Agents Registration Act.
2 people just got arrested over that that work with Trump because they weren't doing it. That's powerful what you say. Oh, let me say one other thing. William Wagner, he did a video that I saw like 2 years ago with a gentleman who was driving, or he was traveling without a license, I believe, and he got arrested. This guy, I saw in the video where he ended up suing, who was Ronald Reagan, I believe it was, and his wife, and they were stuck in a lawsuit and couldn't get out. They were begging the judges to get him off the lawsuit, and he wouldn't do it. But he actually sued them, I think, in their individual capacity. He sued a couple of them because they were not protecting him from the officers. And it ended up that he was one of the ones who would end up, after that, traveling without any type of license, which you don't need to. But, you know, it's deep that when you talk about the fraud and, you know, you start to connect the people who have been working in this for years is powerful. And the way that the oppressive, I don't want to corporate so-called governments have been able to get people is that the knowledge of the people who really know what's going on has not been shared at the same time on a united front.
Well, and one of the reasons our prisons are so full, a lot of times stems from some kind of driving infraction. It's one of the most important things that gets us into the system. And every time we're in the system, it just gets worse and worse because a cop pulls your record and he says, all right, you've already done this and this and this. Now I'm going to get you for that. You've done that and that and that. Now I'm going to get you for this. And pretty soon you end up in prison. And it all starts from driving privileges. Okay, we have the unlimited right of locomotion, but we're supposed to be secure in our papers according to our constitutions. That means having the right documentation. We're free to travel anywhere we want to go, but we need to be having a passport when we do it. Don't roll that dang window down when those red lights are behind you, which, by the way, they created an emergency where none existed, which is a felony the minute they flip those red lights on. Okay, so there's the first felony a cop created right then and there. The minute they flipped the red lights on, they created an emergency where one did not exist. That is a felony. But nobody knows that, so nobody holds them accountable. Okay. Now, you roll that window down and they say, can I have your driver's license, registration, and insurance? What they're really saying is, give me your proof that you're in commerce, see? And then we can write all the tickets we want to write against you. But if you're nice to them and you just hand them your passport and you tell them you're traveling in your private automobile upon the roadways, and those are the words you use, that's common law jurisdiction language, where driving or operating a motor vehicle upon the highways is Admiralty language. Both of them mean the same thing, going down the road in the car, right? But two different jurisdictions by the words you use, and you have your proper documentation for each jurisdiction, then you're perfectly lawful in your right to locomotion. Then you're free to go. But if you want to get arrested, don't give them a driver's license and don't show them a valid passport. Okay, now you're going to get arrested. Your car is going to get impounded. You're going to lose your shit because that's what it is. All right. So go ahead.
Have you seen a lot of people that travel with a passport? Is that something that you know of?
Everybody I have ever taught uses a passport. And I just drove 1,750 miles through 3 states without using my driver's license and having the plates on my truck expired and on and on and on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be registered. I'm not going to give them a registration. I'm not going to let them take a picture of my VIN number. I've got a file folder of about 60 pages, a double-sided of Supreme Court case law that says I'm perfectly lawful in doing what I'm doing, and it's on the dash of my truck covering my VIN number when they come up to my window, if they do. And I'm going to hand them my passport, and it says right there from the Secretary of State, which, by the way, has a whole lot more clout and authority than a police officer. And it says, do not stop and do not detain me, right there in the first paragraph.
What?
Their job is merely to look at your picture, make sure it's you, hand it back to you, and said, I will not detain you any longer. That's their job once they get this document in their hand. But the very first paragraph, and I'll read it one more time, says the Secretary of State of the United States of America hereby request all whom it may concern to permit the citizen or national of the United States named herein to pass without delay or hindrance. What's that say? Pass without delay or hindrance.
Wow.
In case of need to give all lawful aid and protection. That's a commandment from the Secretary of State of the United States to that officer to let me go without delay and to aid and protection. If my wife's in the back seat in labor having a baby, he better get his red lights on and clear a path before I pass his ass. That's what that says.
That's
See
deep.
what I'm saying?
That's super deep right there. See, that's the kind of things that we need, though, because, you know, a lot of people will say things, but they don't show what it is. And so they have not made the knowledge real to themselves, and they just throw it out there. And that's what the people need, is somewhere to see what's real. Why?
You know what? It's not your guys' fault. Full and honest disclosure, we would have been taught that in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade. Aren't we in a governmental school system? Isn't it their requirement to give us full and honest disclosure? Have they ever? No. Okay.
You know, though, when I hear people say like it's all our fault that we don't know all the laws and they're hidden in so many places, I feel the same way. That's why I wanted to bring you on, and I want people to be able to see you, because we are being raped and attacked. We are the keys to knowledge. As the Bible says in Luke 11:52, you look on the Black's Law 6, there's a key there. The keys to knowledge, Jesus himself said lawyers would hide from us. And it's not that every lawyer just wants to hide it, but many are hiding the truth. And it's hard.
When you have the knowledge and you walk into a courtroom, it's the prosecutor and the judge that are shaking in their boots, not you. Okay, it's kind of fun. When I walked into Jamie's courtroom in federal court, I was sitting in the back of the room with my arms up on the stool, and I had my feet crossed, and I'm smiling at the judge. And Jamie read her 5 pages and looked at her and said, I want to know one thing. Is that your beliefs, or is that David's? And he said my name and pointed at me in the back of the room. I'd never been in front of that judge one single day before that. My reputation preceded me into that courtroom. Okay. He wanted to know if I was putting words in her head. Well, yes, I was teaching her. but those words became her words. And those beliefs became her beliefs, because I showed her the proof in hundreds of documents of our history. And I taught her the history of our nation and how we got to where we are today. And I showed her the proof for 3 months before we ever walked in that courtroom. She knew what it was. I didn't have to convince her. All I did is showed her the proof in documents throughout our history. And I showed her the law, and we looked things up together, and we looked at her evidence, and we looked at how she was railroaded, and we said, no, we can't stand for this. And so I helped her with some documents. I helped her write her 5 pages. She stood up in court, and it became her beliefs.
That's what we are having the biggest issue with, David. And I know you understand this. People even asked me up to this last night. Grandy asked me, a couple other people at the protest we did last night. The biggest problem is, and what I think, because I've been in school for psychology for so long, you know, one of the biggest things that people need is the ability to be able to look at the evidence, to stand on the truth. They're scared to jump out if nobody shows them the truth. And that's the biggest danger, is that you don't want to jump out and try to stand in front of these so-called courts that are trying to railroad you if you don't know the truth. But once you know, it's like the Bible says, the truth will make you free, not set you free, make you free. Because when it gets inside of you, you can't help but to do the things to make yourself free. And so that's what we need.
And you got to understand the process. Jamie and her husband brought their motorhome into Walmart parking lot, where I would do my ranch work early in the morning. I'd go spend all day long teaching her, and then I'd go home and do my ranch work till midnight every night. And she was able to get hours and hours and hours and hours of education. And on the times where they had to go back home, I'm on the email and I'm on the phone with her, and I'm teaching her for 3 months. I understand you all can't bring your motorhomes to Walmart. And if you did, there'd be so many motorhomes in Walmart that Walmart would kick us all out. Okay. So I understand that. So I have to try and give you information in as short a time period as possible. And then you have to understand that, hey, I am what I say I am. I'm pretty dang honest. And the law is black and white. It says what it says. It doesn't say what it doesn't say. So you don't need two actors to walk into a courtroom and one of them to present you in the worst light possible and the other one to tap you on the shoulder and say, I did the best job I possibly could. Well, you're getting TPR'd and you're taking your kids. You understand? You gotta be able to absorb as much as possible. Have a little belief in faith that people like Dave Jose and me and Jamie are trying to help you. And then us to give you the documents and you to be smart enough to take those documents and put your information in there and be smart enough to ask questions and be smart enough to let us check your documents over and be smart enough to say, what is the procedure with these documents so we can do it in the right order, in the right time frame so that we can help you, because we can't spend 3 months in Walmart parking lot together.
I want to say something really quick. Now, when I started out with my court hearing, I did have an attorney. I hired an attorney, cost me $12,000 I didn't have. Now, when I was found guilty from a jury, I fired that attorney after I learned all this, and Dave showed me that everything that he taught me is backed up with truth. And then I went forward as sui juris. And Dave, I want, if you got a minute, I wanted you to explain that to people, because I think that's a really important part, because I know people have been taught to go hire attorneys. They know what they're doing, that then it leaves them not to have to worry about stuff. It kind of takes it off their shoulders. That's because we've been taught that. But the bottom line is if you're going to go out there and you want the truth and you want to stand on the truth, you've got to stand up and fight for this yourself, because you're not going to get it through an attorney. A bar attorney.
We can do it for you.
That's right. So I wanted you to explain that, if you could, briefly, why you do not hire an attorney.
Well, the law says when you hire an attorney that an attorney can only represent certain things. A corporation, an entity, a minor, somebody incompetent, or somebody infirmed. Okay, when the law excludes something, it is not in the law. That means that if you're a man or a woman, where does it say an attorney can represent a man or a woman? It didn't. It's excluded from it. Therefore, an attorney cannot represent a man or a woman. They can only represent your entity, which is dead. That's why they say all persons are equal in the law, because all people, in order to walk into a courtroom, have to be dead. When you walk in alive as a man or a woman, you are sui juris, which means of one's own rights. You actually have rights. Now, the problem is if you tell a judge one time that you're sui juris, and you tell him that you're firing your attorney, he's going to keep trying to make you have an attorney, and he's going to say, oh no, you're pro se. So you have to tell him again that you're not pro se, because what does pro se mean? It means professional self. It means you have to follow the same rules as any other attorney, because you're representing your person. They're still going after the person, see? Now you tell him again, no, I'm sui juris. And he says, okay, you're pro per. You're in proper persona. You're still a professional representing your person. That's the same damn thing. I don't care how they say it. It's still the same thing. You're representing. You never want to represent yourself. You never want to represent your person. You want to be the man or the woman. You want to have standing. You want to be alive. You want to be sui juris. So they have to ask you everything 3 times. Ask Jamie. They said, do you want an attorney? Jamie says, no, I don't want an attorney. They said, if you don't take one, our attorney, our public defender, which by the way, we'll pay for, like they pay for anything themselves. No, they're going to pay for it out of her Sesta QB trust, see? But they make it sound real good. And they say, well, if you don't take that public defender, I really think you should. And Jamie says, no, I'm not going to take that defender. And then the judge looks across at the court clerk and he says, you know, why don't you pick up your phone and you call them U.S. Marshals, because we're going to sentence her and have her arrested today if she doesn't take a public defender. He's threatening her again and asking her to take a public defender. And you know that court clerk has seen this before. She didn't even reach for her phone. Probably 5 or 6 minutes went by and she's got the phone right on her desk and she never even reached for it. She knows this is all a charade. And the judge says, you know, I'm just going to arrest her if you don't take that public defender. And if you stand up and you say no again, now all of a sudden, okay, you're sui juris. See? But if you get scared and take that public defender, they have you under their hooks one more time. You jump back into their jurisdiction, which she did, by the way, but that's just why she had more sentencing hearings. She just drug her case on a little bit longer because she enjoyed it so much. But in reality, you know, eventually you become sui juris and you win.
I do want to say that I did do that, but I learned, and I didn't have these documents like Dave has. But I wanted to tell you too, when Dave came to me and he said, you know, I needed to do a affidavit, a truth of affidavit, or affidavit of truth, and I said, well, what's that? So he left me in my motorhome for a week and told me I had 4 boxes to go through, and I had to go through them all, and I had to put them all in order as everything happened. So during that time, well, he came by a few times and everything was across my motorhome floor and on my table. I had papers everywhere. I thought, this is never going to work. What am I doing? But I had to do it. And if he had not pushed and pushed, I would have not learned. And it's so important. And I'm so grateful for him and learning what I did. It not only set me free, but it's helped so many others because I learned. For every person that learns can teach 10 more people. And then those 10 people can teach 10 people. And this is so, it's just got to keep going. But it is phenomenal, the things that I did that I didn't think I could do.
Exponential growth is what it's called. The idea is one person learns and gets it in their brain and teaches multiple people, and the growth becomes exponential, okay? This is what we need. Go ahead, David.
And that's right. And see, even I learned from Jamie's case. I learned a number of things. Jamie's a good researcher. Her husband's a good researcher. We went onto websites that had nothing to do with the court, like fidelity.com. And we pulled off things relating to her custody numbers and compared them with the courts. And we saw what the courts were doing while they were doing it by going to Fidelity, which has nothing to do with them, where we could see it happening in there. And we could see it happening with the Department of Fiscal Services. And we could compare their sample sheets and their SF 273, 274, and 275 forms, the bid bond, the performance bond, the payment bond. And we see what they're doing. And those things we learned along the way. But not only that, we learned how important the rule of 3 is. We learned something else. One of the most important things I learned was I read in the ABA journal right after her sentencing a little statement that they made that shocked me to my core. And it is this. Their motto is, no fact or truth shall be tried in court. So that hit me like a rock, that none of this evidence, this crap they are holding against you even matters. It's all hearsay bullshit in the first place. Okay? There's no firsthand witnesses. They're trying everything based on hearsay, by presumption, by assumption. They don't have any real fact or evidence against you at all. See, here's the thing, no fact or truth shall be tried in court. So that's what this never perfect document involved into. We don't state anything in there about your kids being taken, or what led up to your kids being taken, or anything. We go right after their bullshit, the fraud itself, the fact that they don't have any jurisdiction, that they don't have any status or standing. We put you in a position of status, standing, and jurisdiction, and then we expose the fraud. And then the courts go, oh my gosh, we don't want anybody to know about this fraud. And this person just put it on the public record. So some little law student at Cornell or Harvard or Yale can look it up on the record and start using it against these courts all over the place. And we don't want that to happen. So what's the best way for that not to happen? Let's just dismiss the case. Let's get these kids sent home. Let's wipe it off the face of the earth so nobody can go into the public record and see the fraud being exposed.
You know what it is? It's the ninja. It's the little thing what you saw in the ninja movies. They're like, oh shucks, they found us out. They get the little thing and go, poosh, it just disappear. Let's get it out of here. Run! The redcoats are coming.
Right. So that's what's happening all across this country is all of a sudden some CPS worker is showing back up at your door with the kids and your case has been dismissed. Now, obviously, there's a process that just doesn't willy-nilly happen. And sometimes it's a long process. You got to understand, we don't have a crystal ball. We're dealing with individuals called judges and prosecutors and CPS agents. We don't know when we submit a document what that individual, how they're going to react. But I do know one thing, that if they react badly, if they don't immediately dismiss the case, they're opening themselves up to all kinds of liability by not immediately dismissing the case. See, once they get this document, they're going to try and do three things to get you back in their jurisdiction. And I know I said this already, but the three things are, they're going to try and get you to have an attorney, because that automatically makes you incompetent in the ward of the state. They're going to bring you back into their jurisdiction by trying to force you to have one. Second of all, you can't use this document if you do have an attorney, because you lost right then and there. The second thing they're going to do is they're going to try and get you to sign some form of a contract, a plea deal or something, a TPR. They're going to try and get you to contract with them. And third, they're going to try and, if neither of those first two work, they're going to try and declare you incompetent. They're going to say, oh, we're going to have a competency hearing. We're going to have to get you evaluated by one of our doctors, see, who we can pay $30,000 to and help put his kid through college, to file some kind of a false statement and say you got some problem like, bipolar or PTSD or some other kind of mental label. See, here's the thing, ever since the ACA, the Obamacare Act, you can't say anything to your doctor. There's no patient-doctor confidentiality anymore. The minute he puts something into his notes, it goes into a computer system and it's codified. And in that hospital, like the Phoenix Children's Center Hospital, there's a CPS office downstairs, and they see it on the computer. And now they got some woman upstairs with a mental illness who's saying, I just want to get a second opinion. And that doctor is saying, oh, this needs to happen right now. This is my professional opinion, and I'm God, and this is the only opinion you should be listening to. So he puts a code in the computer, and all of a sudden CPS is on the elevator. They're heading up to your room, and they're taking your kids under court order. They probably got some stupid judge sitting down there in their office too, who will sign this court order. And he works for a private corporation for them. And they're all conspiring in it together to remove your rights so they can take your kids, so they can go after the SESTA-QV fund and the Title IV funds, which are just, those are just little pennies compared to what they're going to get out of your SESTA-QV. See? So then you wonder, what did I do? I did everything right. Why did I lose my kids? I know I did everything right. I jumped through all their hoops. I took a drug test when they told me to. I took a mental eval when they told me to. I'm just following all the their guidelines. Well, bullshit. All they're doing is buying time so they can TPR your kid. They've got to have that kid for 18 months. So they're just buying time. Then they can take your kid. You jump through all the hoops, when in reality, you should have grabbed your damn kid, punched him in the nose, kicked him in the nuts, and ran down the stairs. That's what I would have done. I would have put a bullet right between their eyes. See, every morning when I get up and I put my socks on, I put my socks on. Okay? This ain't a toy. I was well trained. And nobody but God's going to take my kid from me. Never again. Now, does that mean I'm a violent, angry man? No. Do they make me angry? Yeah. But I'm a peaceful, God-fearing, loving person with a fuse about 300 miles long. I'm going to do everything in my power with my knowledge and my understanding to never have to pull this thing out. That's the way it is. I love my neighbors, including the cops, even though they're dishonest, but they don't know just what they're doing. So what does God tell us? First, we turn the other cheek, and then we turn the other one. Then when they take another swing, we sell our cloak and buy a sword. Enough is enough. See? We love our neighbors. We do no harm. That's our motto. That's what we live by. We're peaceful people. But we're not peaceful people against evil people. And once I've told them everything, and I've laid it out for them, and I've laid the fraud out for them, well, I've done everything in my power. I've gone to their courts. I've taken it to a higher court. I've taken it to a higher court. I go to the appellate court and I file my judgment. And if that appellate court doesn't do anything, and I can't call the Secretary of the United Nations and have him call the Secretary of State of the United States, and the Secretary of the United States call the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice call that judge and say, hey, you can't step on this man's human rights. Give his kids back. Once you've gone through all that and they still refuse, what's left? You take the trespasser out. But is that something I'm going to do? No, I don't condone violence. No, I don't. I condone peace. I fly the peace flag in front of my house. I don't fly the war flag of the United States in front of my house. That designates my property as a military installation. I don't do that. Am I American? Do I believe in government? Yeah, I do. Government's supposed to provide us with 19 essential governmental services and no more. I'm about as patriotic as I can get. I fight and I bleed for this country. But I also am not going to let some criminal individuals who happen to be members of a foreign entity, a bar association. That is our biggest war. Our biggest war in this country is not with Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. It's with the bar association. And if you don't believe me, there's an original amendment to our Constitution called the 13th Tona Amendment. Okay. And that's a no titles of nobility, no esquires, no bar association members in public office. Yet if you look at our United States Senate and our United States Congress and the West Wing and our judicial system, they're almost all bar members. My last count is there was like 15 that weren't. Everybody else is. So they're making their own rules, they're making their own laws, they've overrun and usurped our government, our de jure government of we the people, and they've created corporations that have usurped our government. So we have to step outside and we have to say no more, no more. That's what our founding fathers did. England called our founding fathers traitors. Are they traitors or heroes? I guess that depends on which side of the fence you're on. See, the Bar Association, when an attorney like Marcus Mumford is getting tased in their courtroom, is because he is being treasonous to the Bar Association. Why, when William Wagner stands up and he gets thrown in jail for contempt, it's because he's being traitorous or treasonous to the bar. Is he standing up on our behalf? Yeah, he is. Every time.
You know what, David? That's one powerful thing that a lot of people don't talk about. Like, whenever you have a private membership association or organization, you have your own constitution that you go by in there, and you're many times sworn to secrecy for money. And when an attorney stands up, like when we try to say, hey, attorney, can you tell us about this? Something we know is true. They'll kind of work with us some, but then they'll sit back. Most of them will sit back and won't speak or tell what's really happening. Like I'll say, hey, can you tell me what a court of record is? Hey, can you tell me if you guys are part of a private membership association and you have your own constitution you have to go by? They don't want to open their mouth to tell the whole truth. They'll help us some, but then they are afraid to tell the truth. They'll say, I'll lose my job. I'll never practice again. And so you're right when you say that when these brave attorneys step out and really stand for the people, they are looked at as a traitor to the association.
That's right. They are. They are. And I've won a lot of good friends over that were bar members. William Wagner, I love that man, the way he stands up. He's been standing up with Renee Powers in California because they took her house and they took it through mortgage fraud. They had no right to take her house. They took her house and she has taken her case all the way to the Supreme Court of California. And William Wagner is standing up with her. You know, I love that man. He's but for 23 years, he was a prosecutor. He was putting innocent people in jail until he woke up. You know, at some point in time, we have to stand up and say, all right, I recognize the fraud. See, that's the thing about fraud. Fraud has to be recognized. It has to be learned, and then it has to be vitiated, voided from the beginning. And once we stand up and we recognize the fraud, these courts have to vitiate it. They have to.
That you said from the beginning. Now, can you say that one more time for the people? Because a lot of people have CPS cases where they have so-called had their rights terminated, which I don't know how that's even possible, but rights terminated, children adopted. Can you talk about that from the beginning again?
Well, that is why the document is written with so much fraud. It has to be voided ab initio. Ab initio means from the beginning. That means you have to be made whole. I don't care if you're serving 10 years of a 20-year sentence. If you've already served 10 years, there's two things you can go back on: a challenge of jurisdiction and fraud. And once you go back on those two things, they've got to wipe that record clean. They've got to let you out of jail. They've got to make you whole. They've got to pay you for your time, for your imprisonment. They've got to restore your life as if it never happened. Now, obviously, that's pretty hard to do. but that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to void it from the beginning. They should give you millions of dollars just so that you can restore your life, so you can go out and buy another home, so you can go out and replace your vehicles. All the things you lost because of your time put in prison, wrongly accused, they did it through fraud. You expose the fraud and they have to void it from the beginning. Same with your kids.
Does that count CPS and adoption?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if they don't, it's time we stand up.
Dave, I have to get off here.
Perfect.
Okay.
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and let everybody know we're going to get ready to wrap up. David, would you like to come on, and Jamie, would you like to come on again and we talk about the document? Let me say this. I think that it's good that you guys can come on and people can see you guys all around the country at the same time, because this, I don't know if this has happened before where people can all get the understanding they need at once. Because my goal is to be able to fund getting you guys to different states so that people can actually meet you and see you. But I understand that you guys got a life too, and I don't want you guys, you know, trying to rip and run everywhere. Say it again.
It's expensive to do.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. My goal is to get down to Phoenix as quickly as possible. I'm trying to do some things to help make that happen. I know you're trying to help me do some things to make that happen. But it's expensive. I mean, it's by the time you pay either fuel or airfare or hotels or meals or time out that have to be taken care of, it's a couple $1,000s to do that. And
yeah.
But it's important when we can meet face to face, when we can be hands-on, when we can look at your situation, your documents. I mean, when you go to college, you take Math 101, then you take Math 102, then you take Math 103. I mean, this video is like video 101. Okay, it's the basics. I mean, I can't teach you 30 years worth of crap in one class.
What it does is, though, it allows the people to hear what you're teaching so they can know that they want to move on, because I see people in the audience, and some of them are on Facebook, they're saying, you know, this guy is phenomenal. People who know the law are saying, yes, this is true. People want to move forward. People asking how their victims in their classes can work with you. So the thing is, none of us are getting any younger, and we need your knowledge, Dave. And it's my vow and many other people to make sure we fund for you to do this stuff, because we know it costs money. You got a ranch, you got to leave your stuff alone, and you can't do your business when you're doing our business. So we got your back. I don't give a darn. You know? Eventually
your beard's going to turn white too.
You know what? I got a couple of white hairs in here, you know, and that's the thing. I get concerned about the people. That's the thing for me, is that I understand that there's some people who have knowledge in this movement, but when the people who have knowledge can't see the face of the people who are struggling, we don't win. But when the people come together and see the truth at the same time, if you can see all the thumbs up and the hearts and the love that's been going on, we got 40 people, we had up to 45 people watching on here and up to 70 plus people watching on Facebook at the same time. So
at the top of my screen, it says there's 239 participants.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. But
see, mine stopped a long time ago, but that means that 270 something people are watching this right now. 40 are in here as attendees. There's others who probably came in because my system slows down. But if you see 230 something, that's a lot of people who are going to tell a lot of other people, and it's going to grow exponentially. So one thing I know about marketing is stuff starts going super fast when people get the basics.
Okay, I've never used Zoom before. I mean, this is like my first time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I just pulled up a little thing, questions and answers. There's 2 people that have asked questions.
Yep.
TT asked, how do we become a state national? Well, the United States Code says the first thing you have to do is notify the Secretary of State of the United States of your change of status. So we send them an affidavit, okay? There is other forms I believe is important, so we can talk about those later. The second question Mindy asked, motions in Lemine predetermine the case, okay? And I know I said that wrong because I'm a farm boy. I don't really care what their terminology is when it comes to that. So first of all, let's talk about motions. Motions are something attorneys do in a courtroom with other bar association members like judges and other attorneys. A motion is a plea. It's a, will you please, judge? Will you please just move this court along? Let's keep it moving. Vote up or down on this subject. Please, pretty please, judge. Nah. Okay, bullshit. Men and women don't file motions. We also don't have to follow their rules and time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to take that out of the equation. We're going to take their rules and time frames out of the equation because we file notices, we file affidavits, we file orders, and we file demands and claims. Okay, that's it. We don't file motions. Motions are a plea to the court. I don't plead to the court and I don't pray to the court. I pray to my God. I get down on my knees and I pray to my God. I stand up in court as a man and I demand my public servants, as officers and agents of government, officers and agents of our court, I tell them what they need to do. See, I don't plea with them. We have a problem. We have a contract or we don't. Okay. And if I do not wish to contract, I will rescind my contracts. Now, do I have to obey a contract? Yes, I do. If it's in a proper form, if it follows the 8 elements of a contract, yes, I need to pay my contract. I need to obey my contract. But let me tell you something. Any of these contracts they're getting you into aren't contracts at all. I mean, they'll put your signature in a box. Do you know what a box means?
Cancels out anything there.
When you put a box around something, it is not part of the agreement. Wow. Show me you have a viable contract, Judge. You don't. Here's what a contract entails. Show me the contract. Okay, here's why it's not viable. You're holding a person here, an entity. You've got an address here that says it's a resident of Washington, D.C. You've got these terms of the contracts. Was that fully disclosed? No. You've got a signature here. This signature is from an officer of that corporation. I'm a man and a woman. I'm not the officer of that corporation. You're holding my biological property, my uniquely created biological property. You're holding hostage. You can't do that. You can't do that. You have no right to do that. And you can't take a right away from me that you didn't have in the first place. Now, either give it back or suffer the consequences. I'm going to hold you accountable. And I'm going to hold you accountable before God and everybody else. So if you don't want your fraud exposed to everybody else, then give me my kid back. If you don't care if your fraud's exposed to everybody else and you're going to continue to take my kid, then I'm going to have to take the next step and put a lien on your house or your retirement fund or get you on an emolument charge. And if that doesn't work, well, you know, Karma Fairy's going to come take care of you. You know, I'll let God be the judge. I might have to help arrange the meeting. And that's how I feel about it. That's my beliefs. I believe that's what we're taught to do, to sell our cloak and buy a sword and smite evil down wherever it lays. But that's the last resort. We turn this cheek, then we turn this cheek, and then we say enough is enough. And we love our fellow men.
Hey, David, I got one other question that was online. So Nicholas Herring, I believe his last name is, but it's Nicholas. He said, well, what happens, because I think he actually was born in DC proper and then he moved to Washington, actual Washington, or something like that.
Good luck, buddy. you were born under the auspices of the United States. You could have been born in Puerto Rico or Guam or any other United States territory. You can be a U.S. national instead of a U.S. citizen. So that's would be my first step, is to be a U.S. national. That's one step up in status. Now, the other thing is you are still a man. Can you prove through a patent of nativity your DNA existed upon this land before government? If you can, then I'd stand upon the land that way. Okay? So never give up. You just don't. Once you live in the state of Washington for at least 7 years, then you can be a state national of Washington. Common law, 7 years. Common law marriage, 7 years. Common law property rights, 7 years. Once you're on a piece of property 7 years, you have right to that property. Okay? Common law, 7 years. So once you're a state, inhabitant of that state for 7 years, adopt the state. Now you can be a state national. But if you haven't been in Washington 7 years, that's your answer.
Thank you so much for that, Dave. He said thank you. That was actually powerful. That's another way to look at things.
Okay.
All right, so what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to get ready to go ahead and wrap up. We want to definitely thank David Straight for coming on. We want to thank Jamie for coming on. We want to thank all of you for coming on. Now, I know, and you guys can answer in the Facebook comments, or you can answer in these comments here. Does anybody else want David and Jamie on again? I know you do. How many of you want to go deep into this knowledge? Get to the point where you fully understand how to do these affidavits, how to stand as men and women, or man and woman, and really take this thing to the next level and stand for our nation. You guys have done amazing. You showed how serious you are by sitting here for the time of this meeting, paying close attention, being interactive, because you want it, and we appreciate that. Go ahead, Dave.
We love you all, and we do appreciate you all, and we want you to live a life of peace and prosperity and happiness. And that's our whole goal. It's called liberty.
Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is our goal.
We want everybody to be people that can live on the land freely.
And you need to love this woman. Everybody should love this woman. She has stood like you wouldn't believe.
That's only because of you.
So
You and my mighty God.
See, this is the beautiful thing that I see. So you see so many people in power. From what Dave's seen, over 200 people seeing this. I can see 110 plus coming on and watching and paying attention together, interacting. And what I want to say is that we can do what is necessary to make it. This is why I don't play a lot of games online. I look at moving forward, taking action, but taking action with wisdom. And so we're blessed here to be able to hear wisdom from David Straight today, from Jamie, people who have actually done it. David Straight taking part in kids coming home all over the place. We can do it too. guys who going through traffic issues, getting robbed by courts, all these different things, we can get together and start moving. And I think that this is beneficial because it is not expensive to go on a Zoom meeting and be able to deal with things and start learning and knocking it out. We can fund getting David sent to different places, but let's get him sent to places where people are going to take action. So if we can get you to learn the truth and you tell somebody else, I think Dave told me a story earlier today. Dave, was it the person who got the 2 kids back recently? They taught other people, right? Where they're starting to?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, everybody's starting to stand up when they know the truth. You know, you've got wonderful people all across this country, just taking a stand. And I am seeing it multiply like you wouldn't believe. You know, I used to stand in front of little classes in my hometown of 20, 30, 40, 50 people. Jamie had me down in Christmas Valley in a room for 20 people. You know, we used to see 20 people here and there at a time. Now I'm seeing thousands of people standing up all across this nation. Let me tell you, if we can get this document into 500, in front of 500 judges in this country who's going to read this document, it's going to change this nation. And it's going to change Australia and Japan and Canada and England and Ireland. And I've gotten kids back in all of those countries now, not just the US. People from Canada call me because you know what? They're all under the same type of law. English, Crown, British rule. If you don't believe me about the Crown Inc., go to the state of Illinois' website under the Office of the Attorney General, click on the History tab, and it'll tell you that the State General's Office of the Attorney General, which is the #1 attorney in that state, it says that office was put in place to protect and uphold the interests of the Crown.
What?
And it used to say that on every Attorney General's website in this country. But with people like the Bundys standing up and Mal here and other people standing up, they're pulling it off their websites.
Woo!
But
is that Illinois? What state is that?
Illinois Attorney General's office, on their website under the History tab, it says the Attorney General's office was put into place to protect and uphold the interests of the Crown.
Wow.
Okay, they don't hide this stuff from us. They don't hide this stuff at all. In fact, look at all the new federal courthouse buildings all across the country. Any of our federal courthouse buildings, you're going to see that they're built in the shape of a ship. Even the old one in Portland, Oregon, that Jamie was in, you walk in this square building, and you walk in and you look at the wall in front of the courthouse, and it's curved to the shape of a ship inside the building. So they're not hiding this from anybody. They hide everything in plain sight. That's what they do. It's all out there. All this information I've given you. I mean, I couldn't in my wildest dreams ever sat down one night and made this shit up. Okay, I did not make this up. I learned it over a very long period of time in lots of history, and it is absolutely amazing. I was trying to find a picture real quick of the federal courthouse in Miami, which is just being built under construction. But lots of the courthouses, I know Kurt Pendergrass has posted pictures of the federal courthouse buildings. There you all go. You can see it. It's a big ship at 4 docks. Okay. They're just taking passengers. They're taking your manifest. You're being taxed at the dock at port charges. That's all it is. And all this is a great big bank with bank administrators. And I've sat in traffic court for 4 hours watching person after person after person go through. And in 4 hours in a little tiny podunk town of Redmond, Oregon, I watched them ring up over $30,000 in profit in 4 hours on traffic offenses through their bank.
Mm-hmm.
That's a heck of a lot of profit for a little tiny town of 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Nothing but banks.
They
Just
run
tax
those cases through super fast too. I've seen some of the documents from the 1930s where they were retraining the attorneys to go by rules and regulations that would go against the separation of powers. And so they were saying, oh, all the old attorneys won't understand this, but the new ones, they'll totally get it and be comfortable with it because they're teaching them Roman court law. They're teaching them those same statutes in the Bible. And you think about how simple this is. Just like you said, turn one cheek, turn the other cheek. Well, if somebody hit you in the cheek, they harm you, you can sue them to death, right? They hit you in the other cheek, you can sue them to death. But we see where when the Bible says, you know, don't harm your neighbor, you know, treat your neighbor like yourself and love God with everything you got. Once you do that, you don't need a whole bunch of statutes. You don't have to say, don't take your neighbor's wife. You know, that'll hurt your neighbor. Don't take your neighbor's car. You know, that'll hurt your neighbor. But what these private entities are doing is they're saying they're making a whole bunch of new statutes to go by rather than just follow the freedom that God said we should have. So where God says, here, these two laws, just do this. What they do is they say, oh, don't cross the street while text messaging on your phone. Don't cross the street while chewing gum while text messaging on your phone. Don't cross the street in a J pattern. And if you do them all together, we'll get you for 3 times the fee. So they're making more and more fees to bind you by with nobody being harmed or injured. That's the game they're running. And they just expect that we're never going to find out.
Right. See, we need to take our country back by taking our counties back. We have to have our grand juries in place. See, right now, all grand juries in the United States are run by the prosecutor. No defense evidence, no defense witnesses are ever being held by a grand jury or heard by a grand jury. They're not. So people are getting indicted without the defense even being able to use their evidence and their witnesses to give the grand jury a chance or an opportunity to see both sides. The prosecutors run this grand jury independently all by themselves. So it's all a one-sided grand jury indictment. Then somebody gets indicted. A lot of times the sheriff or somebody shows up at your house with a warrant and throws your butt in jail. Now you're not working. You're not feeding your family. You're not paying your house payment. You lose your house. You lose your car. You lose your job. And they've destroyed your life. And you're in there for 5-6 months before you're even tried. And then let's just say you're found innocent. You get to go home. Yippee skippy. You've lost your entire life, everything you've ever worked for. And you were innocent in the first place because some prosecutor controlled the grand jury. You understand what I'm saying here? How important it is, why I'm getting pissed just talking about it. My face is getting red and my voice is starting to crack. I mean, I get mad at this kind of bullshit crap that I see. That's what happened to Jamie. See, the prosecutor ran the grand jury, told all of her lies. And then the prosecutor gets up in trial and tells all their lies. Well, her attorney sits on his ass and files motions. And then the judge denies the motions of her evidence and the motions of her witnesses and denies this and that. And that's why this court has a 98% conviction rate. They railed her through the system with no due process of law, none whatsoever. So I just got to ask the question, when is it time to stand up and do a common law grand jury? Well, the answer is now. The problem is we don't have the effective force behind us unless more people stand up and be a militia and Now everybody's going to call me, one of those sovereign citizens. Well, what a stupid thing to say in the first place. That is a term thought up by the FBI to discredit people. You're either sovereign or you're a citizen. You can't be both. That's an oxymoron. Okay? They don't want people to know that they're truly sovereign. Even our president has stood up and said the people are sovereign.
Get the government back to the people.
Georgia was being sued in federal court in Supreme Court of the United States, and they said, no, Georgia, you're not sovereign. The people of Georgia are sovereign. I mean, our federal courts have said this over and over and over again. But they're trying to convince you that it's a bad thing to be sovereign. We're all sovereign. We're supposed to be free men. A free man is a king. He is sovereign. Does that supposed to mean that we're supposed to make our neighbors servants? No, they're kings too. Allow them to be kings. Help them be kings. Love them as kings. I've had a judge one time stand up in court and say, you call me judge or your honor. I said, well, if we're going to use false titles, you call me the king. Because he's merely an administrator. His court is a private court. It's owned by one man. I challenge you to start looking at Dun & Bradstreet. If you're being held by a city police officer, look up the city's Dun & Bradstreet number. Look up his agency's Dun & Bradstreet number. Look up CPS's Dun & Bradstreet number. Look up the court's Dun & Bradstreet number, the state's Dun & Bradstreet number, the federal government's Dun & Bradstreet number. They are all private corporations, and Dave's been saying this to you. I love y'all. Enough's enough for today. I'm going to go to bed. I want to do that. I fight this fight 20 hours a day, guys. I sleep between 2 in the morning and 6. Usually between midnight and 2 is my study time. I'm constantly learning. I'm a man. I'm fallible. But the more knowledge I have, the less infallible I'm going to be. The more perfect I'm going to be. And if we want to be like our gods one day, we have to be perfect. It's never going to happen in this lifetime. I can guarantee you that. But just do the best job you possibly can, learn the most you possibly can, be a student of life, and then stand up.
All right, well, Dave, we thank you so much. We're going to get you and Jamie back on as soon as possible to go over the document, because some of the people want to see that and start understanding and learning. So we'll have the platform open for you for whenever you're ready, whenever you can come on. I'll set the classes up. Since we're on Facebook, we can move a lot of people really fast. We're on Zoom, we can move a lot of people really fast. So we set this up within like 2 days. Once again, you have our back. We're going to make sure we cover you. I know you don't ever ask for anything, but I don't give a darn. You're going to take it because you have loved us and you help us, and you got a life, you got your ranch, and we want to make sure that when we take your time, we look out for you and make sure you have everything you need too. That's what's right by God. So I'm going to let you rock and roll. Settle wants to donate. Anybody else who wants to donate, wait, actually, let me get your PayPal so I could just set it up so everybody can send it directly to you, because they've been sending it through me.
Okay, it's straight, just like my last name. Straight, ENT, at MSN.com.
All right, so everybody who wants to give, let's continue to show love. Some of us have already given today. Let's continue to look out. We'll get him back on quick. Y'all see that? It was about an hour ago that he said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and rock and roll. And I'm like, we're going to ask a couple more questions. So he cares.
Let me make a promise to you. The promise is I'm going to use your money to help others. Okay? This ain't for me. I ain't doing this for my own benefit. This is for me to help as many as I can.
Hey, do
That's
something.
my
You know
promise.
what? Do this, David. Sometimes make sure you got stuff to eat. That's okay, and other stuff, because I know you travel on the road. You
Yeah,
don't
I get
sleep.
that.
You know,
I
so
get that.
you got bills and stuff too, and just understand that we understand that we have to take care of those who are going to help us move. Just making affidavits. I spent $300 in affidavits in 1 week, and I know you make affidavits and help people. I know that you do a lot of stuff you don't even tell people. So just understand that in the Bible we have an idea where there is to be what's called an equality. So if I can eat food, you can eat food. If I can live indoors, you can live indoors, you know?
Just ink and paper is expensive, you know.
I was like, man, whatever happened to a nickel piece of paper or something? This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, 88-page document, and they're like, I get 3 of them, it's like $21. Send it out to some people, it's like $12 each, you know? Then
Right.
we got smart. We're like, let's put it on skinnier paper. Like, this paper is too heavy, so the price came down, but still $300 in a week. And so we want to do this day. We want to look out for you, and we're trying to put some stuff together where the people learn to take care of each other, because some people can't afford to make the affidavits. So
Right.
we need to make sure that we start putting money together and help people fund affidavits. If we got one of my guys in Arizona, we bought an inkjet printer. I donated one of my printers that was a $50 off. We got an inkjet printer that has buckets this long inside of it. You can see through. You pour ink into it from a jar, and it can print 1,400 pages from the ink.
Those Epson Inkwell printers are awesome.
That's it. That's what it is. That's exactly what it
I'm going to be needing a new one pretty soon. My old Panasonic is getting pretty old.
We'll,
you know?
we'll put some money together if God lets us live, and we'll go ahead and make sure we fund your printer, because you're doing it for us. So anything that helps you helps the people. Anything that helps the people helps you, helps me. Because if all of us are fighting and doing stuff with each other and together and for each other, nobody's left. And I'd be darned if I see people who can't get affidavits out because they've been legally abused, and we can't set something up to help them be able to get their stuff printed out and get their freaking kids back. So I'm about action and fighting. I thank you, Dave, for being about action and fighting, because you blessed us today. And we're going to call you back soon so we can get in that group and do the affidavit. I'll put the affidavit in there so people can read it. And then after people tell me that they read it, then I'll call you in if you're down.
Okay.
Well, I know you're down.
Well, we love you all.
All right. Catch you later. Peace. I'm going to go ahead and end with a little bit of music. Everybody can stay around if you want to. I'm going to turn off Facebook so they don't kill the whole video because I played some music. All right. But we love you guys. I appreciate all you guys for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and stop streaming through Facebook. I let Facebook people on. I wasn't going to do it because there's haters who like to come and mess up our videos. But you guys are lovely. You are wonderful. People on Facebook, you are some of the most powerful and amazing people I've ever seen. Keep your strength going, keep your heart going. You have been part of something special today. People who are on here as attendees, I'm gonna play a little bit of music, let y'all talk to each other if you want to exchange numbers. Please, nobody who's connected to any frauds or fakes or people who are gonna talk junk behind our backs, don't freaking play ball with that. The first time somebody says something stupid, just block the people if you need to, because we're tired of the games. We're trying to move forward and win. All right. So we will stop the stream on Facebook. I love you, Facebook people. Y'all share this video everywhere like crazy. I love y'all. If y'all still want to donate. A couple of y'all wanted to send donations and I couldn't get to you in time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Nicholas, thank you, big bro, for coming on. Dewana, if you get added to the special group, we'll get the stuff out in there. We're trying to keep it out of the hands of the people who work with CPS. There's a few of them. I love the heck out of y'all. We're going to stop streaming and we're going to talk to the attendees a little bit privately. Catch y'all later. Y'all be cool. And once again, peace, Facebook.